me start. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Nesma.mostafa. I work for the British Council, leading two higher education programs, insights, and student mobility. I'm here today to, in partnership with UCAS and UKVI, to speak with our amazing agents and counselors and educators to support students getting into UK higher education. Here's Aidel. Hi, Aidel. Thanks. All right. So guiding students through UK higher education, the webinar will focus on international student experience. Our primary audience are the people working to support students going into UK higher education. So agents, counselors, sometimes we know that educators take that role, teachers sometimes guide students. So anyone working closely with students on guiding them to higher education. Can you see, is my slide moving? Okay, Aidel, can you see the agenda now? Amazing. All right, so today's agenda will include the following. I will speak first about the tools available for you to support your students from the very outset of their experience into UK higher education. Then my colleague Becka Horsley will speak about the UCAS overview of undergraduate cycle. And then finally, last but not least, Rob Reid from UKVI will speak about the student visa journey. I see a diverse group of people and attendees are coming in. Please make sure to sign in the form. Colleagues, please paste the form in the chat again so that our attendees sign in. Once you sign in, we'll be able to send you the webinar's material. All right, so let's jump to here. All right, so I want to ask you, why do you think more than 600,000 undergraduate and postgraduate students choose the UK as a study destination? From your experience, drop one reason in the chat, please. Let us know you're here and let us know you're here. Hi, Becca. Thanks, Becca. Okay, drop the reason in the chat. Quality education, rich history, reputation, language, quality. So from North Africa last year, 21-22, we had 10,000 students from North Africa and the Levant studying in the UK, almost half and half. Half undergraduate students, half of them were postgraduate students. And from the Gulf, we had more than 32,000, 60% are postgraduate. And I see the reasons coming in: reliability, reputation, globally recognized degrees. And why do you think easy entry process, straightforward process, thanks to all the sector working to improve this student experience application process? Okay, proximity to Middle East, of course, so that sometimes that's the distance. So our MENA students go to the UK for the quality and because it's closer to home than many other also good quality destination, higher education destination. And the reasons, you cover them all. So academic excellence and quality of teaching, employee ability in careers, opportunities also, so that the skills they acquire in UK higher education and how competitive they become, as well as a student experience, so living in the UK, and you've added more. The ranking is one other thing. So we have 2 of the world's top 4 universities, and 26 are in the top 200 best institutions, according to QS ranking. So, of course, that's also one reason. But today we're talking about how we can support student experience even more. There are estimates, there's research done, and we know that 50% at least of students going to the UK use the support of agents and counselors, and particularly agents too. And there are now new estimates that make this percentage go higher to 70%. And thus, the first point of contact for students is agents and counselors. And that's why the British Council, as well as the UK higher education sector partners, are working closely with agents and counselors to support international students. This journey should be familiar to you. This is the, let me see. It's pretty small at my end, the presentation slide. So this is the international students journey. I'm very sure it's familiar to you. The students start from the perspective of the student. The students start to explore the options they have, and then they move to considering these options, and then making a decision to apply in one or more universities, and then planning to travel, and finally commencing their studies. And this is like a snippet from the Good Practice Guide for UK Education Agents Partnering for Quality. Okay, let me do the next slide and then ask you a question. So, of course, UK prioritizes international student experience, and international student experience has been cited in the International Education Strategy 2021. Numerous studies and initiatives have been are currently going on and have gone on have taken place around improving international student experience, including studies by Higher Education Policy Institute, UK CISA, and others, Office for Students, of course. And if we want to chunk the student journey, what makes it a positive journey? It wouldn't be only studying in the UK. It actually starts way before that, before joining the university, while making decision around their choice of study. So making informed decisions helps student experience. And then while studying in the UK, which is of course the university's role, or the higher education providers' role, to support them build the knowledge they need, the skills, as well as giving them the support. And after graduation also, because once the student graduates, they want to see the outcome of the hard work they've put and the investment they've put in, into their studying years. And accordingly, working together to support international student experience, the sector covers resources to help students throughout their journey, not only while studying in the UK. And again, agents and counselors are a big part of that. So resources for agents and counselors would primarily aim to support you, guide your students, but also follow best practice. And students also have their resources that we'll get a peek into in a bit, to do their due diligence activities and to prepare for studying and living in the UK. So what are some of the needs of international students through their journey from choosing university to traveling and studying abroad? Can you drop me something in the chat, please? Share with us. You are the frontliners. You work very closely with the students. So what are some of the needs for students through their journey of choosing a university and traveling and studying abroad? Drop us something in the chat. The cost of living, yes. Budgeting, language preparation, accommodation is a big one, of course. Visa requirement. Yes. Yes, so the future, the outcome, the student outcome, the employability and employment options, routes, scholarships, the quality of education they're receiving. Yeah, Olga, I hear you. I hear you. A lot of students are stuck in the ranking So, and our role as your role actually as student guides, students counselors, is to educate them about what it means, how to choose a university that fits and a program that fits their needs, rather than only focusing on one criteria, like ranking, and leaving the rest of it. Connections to the country they will go to, family and friends, a whole range of things. And that means the student make decisions based on different aspects, and your role is to support them make the decisions according to what matters to them. So they go through the awareness phase, they're asking questions and they're feeling different feelings, from excited to overwhelmed. And through consideration phase in particular, they reach out to you as agents and counselors. And they also sometimes reach out to universities and ask questions. And questions that come to their minds include things like, does this agent really care about me? Or are they directing me towards a particular program? Does this university, will I enjoy studying in this university? Will I be well supported in this university? How do I make a choice? Also, would I be able to support myself, or would my family be able to pay for this fees? Then during the decision, how to make the decision is one of the key questions. And then waiting for the outcomes. And a lot of agents would support students and kind of chase universities to respond about questions about applications. So is our student accepted or not? And then finally, the decision phase, there are two phases, like choosing what to apply to, but then there are choosing which options to go for after getting acceptance letters. Let's say a student is accepted in a couple of universities, until they make their final decision and go to the university. So you've said it all. You said a lot of things in the chat. And again, you're the experts here. And students do have needs, different needs, and personalized support is one of the key things agents and counselors have been amazing doing. Conscious of the time, I'll take a look at the chat. Yeah, job placement and career is one of the indicators for investment. Like, is it worth investing in this degree or not? Thank you so much. So in each of the stages, you're offering opportunities to explore options early on. Some agents would do marketing campaigns, counselors at schools would do like career days, answer questions in the consideration, and ask the right questions so the students would think about their decision. With decision, a whole range of services you offer as agents, like even helping with the application visa processing and finding scholarship, with planning, accommodation. Some agents do support students, and some schools also have this guidance on student accommodation all the way until they reach there. Now, what I've seen, if you have questions, please post the questions in Q&A things, noted. And where I've got this resource from is the Agent and Counselor Training and Engagement Hub. You find that all the resources around the student journey under the Good Practice Guide for UK Education Agents. So one of the best things to do to yourself and to your students or clients that you guide into higher education is to keep yourself up to date with the knowledge around the sector, and transfer this knowledge to your students. And the way to do it is basically, oh, the content cannot be displayed. Can you see my slides? On.
Yes. Someone maybe, yes.
What slide do you
Yes,
see?
yeah.
Do you see slide 18?
Yes, 18.
All
Now
right, it might.
19.
Okay,
Yes,
great.
now it's 19.
Thank you.
Maybe.
So you find this resource, the Good Practice Guide for UK Education Agents. It's an amazing resource that has a lot of things that can help you as an agent make partnerships with universities, but also could be useful for school counselors, particularly who are interested in learning about the student journey and the emotions they go through and how best to support them. It's developed through experts in the higher education field, including universities, including counselors and agents. So it will help you look at things from different perspectives. And more resources are on the Agents and Counselor Training and Engagement Hub. And let me ask you this question. I'll share a poll shortly. Things that are a bit slow at my end. Are you on the Agent and Counselor Training and Engagement Hub? You should have a poll on your screen now. Nice. A lot of have already completed the training. Keep your responses coming, please. So yes, so those who are on the hub and have completed the training, you already know about this. The hub is a one-stop shop for everything that would support agents and counselors engage with the UK as a study destination. It includes a free training course that covers all the questions that students would be asking you, from visas to which university to which type of university to choose, the resources to study UK and other resources that you might find useful. It will also feature events and webinars to help for continued professional development for yourselves and insights that matter to you. This is the course content. Why choose the UK? The UK education system, preparing students for a UK higher education student experience, values and ethics, visas and immigration, post-graduation or post-study options. And then employability and careers is our latest addition, and it's a very useful module. And then finally, working with the British Council. There are assessments that you can complete. And I also wanted to highlight this resource, the reference to other organizations that work with agents and counselors. So the good practice guide, you'll find them here under Agent Quality Framework, and the links to other organizations as you see in the slides. I'll share with you the slides later on. So some of the organizations we reference on the hub include UK CISA and include UCAS, and our colleague Becka will present shortly. And you can use the resources to keep yourself up to date, and also share some of them with their students. A lot of them are student facing. Or you could also join us in events where we help you engage with the sector partners. Soon we'll engage more partners, and today we have UCAS and UKBI. Study UK is an amazing resource to share with your students and has information around scholarships. And let me share in my next poll. Do we look familiar to you? Have we met before on the ground? So have you attended any of our in-country events? Where did you attend them? So select all the places you've been. Or if you haven't yet, just let us know. A lot from UAE. Oh, no one matters in Kuwait or Oman or Qatar. So we're on the ground. Not yet 62%. We look forward to meeting you on the ground. Okay, so anyone guiding student in the UK higher education can be on the hub, can complete the training, and it's for free, and it's very smooth process. If you are not on the hub yet, make sure you are, so you stay up to date with what's happening in relation to guiding students into UK higher education. And I have come to the end of my presentation. I can take a couple of questions if there are any, and I'll be responding to the rest of the questions in the chat as well as my colleagues. May, do we have any questions? Yes.
Hi, Nesma. Yes, we have questions, but it's related to the hub, and we provided them with a link. They want to know details about how the agents and counselors training and engagement hub will be updated to reflect the latest trends in international student recruitment, and how can they, as counselors, use the resources to better support their students. So once they register and receive training and assessment, so they'll join the hub and receive all the resources to support their students.
Thank
So
you,
if you want to,
for
yeah.
that. Yeah, so around trends in student recruitment, we do have, so another part of my work is working into insights. We will have some trend updates soon. HESA data is not out yet for last year, or it's not complete. And once it's out, you will be informed through the hub, and we can run events around trends in student recruitment. If that's something of appetite, let us know in the chat if this is something you're interested in. Yes, one more question before I move to Becca. Is there anything else that you think we should answer?
Actually, no questions. They are asking about the hub, yes, and registration, and we provided them with a link. And the recording, we'll send the recording later via emails.
Super. Thank you so much, May.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Becca. I'll stop sharing. Let me...
Hi everybody. Nice to be here today.
Nice to have you here. I'm trying to stop presenting for some reason. Can you share your screen? Let me try it.
Let me try, yeah, see if mine will take over this screen.
Yeah, it did.
Okay,
Super.
mine's come instead. So welcome everybody, and thank you for inviting me to speak here again today. So for those of you who weren't here last time, my name is Becca and I work as the International Customer Success Partner at UCAS. So my role is to deliver training and to work on all the resources that are available to you as people advising students to make sure that they have an international focus as well. So they're really supporting all people who are working with those students wherever you are in the world. And this is part of UCAS's commitment to improve the experience for international students for the UK. So if any of you do have any feedback about resources that you would like to see or any changes that you'd like us to make, at the end of the presentation when I send around these slides, there will be a QR code to sign up to our advisor panel where you can give us your feedback if that's something that you'd like to do, because we love to hear from you. We know things work very differently in different areas of the world. So in the session today, we're going to go over some timelines for the rest of the cycle, the upcoming 2025 cycle, including some updates, and then we'll look at how you can use the hub to support your students in that research phase of their journey and the resources that we have for you to support them through those later stages as well. There will be some time to answer some questions at the end, so you can either put these in the Q&A or you can come on camera and ask those to me later. I've already received some of your questions in advance, so I will try and answer those as we go through the presentation as well. And you'll get a PDF of these slides after, so any links that I mention, you will be able to access those as well. So we'll start by just going over the remaining dates in the 2024 cycle. So the upcoming period, which we are entering into now, is the confirmation and clearing period. So this is the time when students are receiving their results and they're finding out if they are successful in confirming that place at their firm or their insurance choice. And clearing is an option for students who either have not yet applied or they might need to explore other options. So this could be because they didn't achieve the grades that they were requested in their offer, or it could be they've actually achieved much higher grades than they anticipated. So now they've got a lot more choices available to them. So clearing can be a bit of a stressful time for the students. So what we'd recommend that you do now as we're going into this result period is to speak to your students before the actual results day. So have a chat with them about what would you be willing to compromise on if you achieve higher than expected? Do you still want to go with your original choice, or do you want to explore your options? So you're having those conversations and that preparation now. And for international students, we know that they receive their results at a slightly different time to these UK results days that are listed here. But please remember that even if you're not receiving results from a UK exam board, the embargo periods will still apply. And during those periods, updates won't be made to the applications, and we won't be able to tell you either here at UCAS or from the university about what's going on with those, just to protect the integrity of those results. If your student is somebody who's using clearing, we'd also recommend, says here that the last date is the 21st of October. If your students are going to need a visa to study in the UK, which I think most of your students probably will, make sure that they speak to the university as well to check whether they have an internal deadline for students who need a visa, because that's likely to be a little bit earlier, so make sure that they're not missing out. And if any of you are working with students who are taking the IB, the International Baccalaureate, make sure that the school's IB coordinator has given permission to share those results with UCAS. They have until the 5th of July to do that, so that's something that need to be doing really quickly to avoid having to pay that fee to share with us as well. So how clearing works, so once your student has gone into clearing for whatever reason, whether they have chose to put themselves into clearing or whether they've ended up in there because they perhaps didn't achieve those results, these are the steps that they need to follow. So they will receive a clearing number, which will appear in their UCAS hub, and they need to be quoting that and their UCAS ID when they're speaking to universities. So as we said, research is key at this phase to make sure that they're not rushing into a decision. They're still checking the course content. They're still checking the city if they're looking at a different university from where they considered. But the difference between clearing and the main process is that students need to contact the university directly to discuss this. And then once they've done that, so they need to speak to them on the phone, and it does need to be the student they speak to, not just the advisor. You can obviously be there to support, but the student should be with you. They'll discuss what they've achieved, and then if the university would like to consider taking them, they can then enter that as a choice onto UCAS once they have had that conversation with the university. The university or college will then consider that application the same way that they would with an application in the main cycle. And if everything is as they discussed on the phone with your student, then they should hopefully be placed on a course. If they're not happy with the offer that they receive from that university, or they're unsuccessful, they can keep going through this process one at a time until they receive a place somewhere that they're happy to go and study. And then we'll just take a quick look at the upcoming admissions cycle as well. So this is for students who'll be applying to start their studies in autumn 2025. The rough dates are the same each year, and you will be getting this slide to have a note of all of these dates. But just some things to highlight, because there was quite a few questions about medicine and about Oxford and Cambridge. So medicine, veterinary medicine, dentistry, or any courses at Oxford and Cambridge have a slightly earlier deadline, which is the 15th of October, whereas all of the rest of the courses have the 29th of January for that equal consideration deadline. Some of the little quirks with applying to those early deadline courses are you need to remember that you cannot apply to Oxford and Cambridge. You have to pick one or the other. And for medicine, dentistry, veterinary science, and veterinary medicine, you can only apply to 4 courses in that subject, and then your 5th choice must be something different. It can be quite similar. So, for example, you could apply to 4 medicine courses and a biomedical science, but only 4 can be in that specific medicine, veterinary medicine, or dentistry area. Somebody had already put in their questions about the medical school entry criteria, so the interview and testing process. This will vary between institutions, so if that's something your student's looking at, it's best to check directly with the university, but normally this is in person, so make sure that your student is prepared that they may need to travel to the UK if they get an interview at a medical school. I think somebody also asked about advanced entry for medicine, if somebody has already done a bachelor's degree in their home country. This isn't very commonly done in the UK, so I'd recommend if you contact the universities to see if that is possible. That wouldn't be something that's done through UCAS, and that would be entirely at their discretion. We also have something called UCAS Extra, which is for students who perhaps have not received an offer in that main application cycle, or they received offers but they're not happy with the offers that they received. So once they've made their initial 5 applications and they didn't receive an offer or don't want to accept their offers, and they've had all of their decisions, they can't be waiting for a university to reply to them. They can keep applying to one more choice at a time until they receive something that they're happy with. And remember that your students, if they receive an offer they're not happy with, they can always decline their offers and use this extra or that clearing process. We want people to be happy with the offers they receive. They're happy to go to that university. We don't want them to feel pressured into something that isn't right for them. So just going to give a quick overview of the steps of completing the application. So these are the stages that the student would need to follow if they are linking to you as a registered centre, whether that's you're the school or you're an agent working with the students. So firstly, students do that research phase and then start the application. And then once that application is complete, it will be sent to the registered centre for the reference and the predicted grades to add onto there. And you can also obviously read that application, check if there's anything the student needs to edit. And then if you're happy with that, as the register centre, you will then send that to UCAS. We'll process it and pass the universities to make the decision. We do encourage you set your own internal deadlines. Obviously, we've shown our deadlines on that last slide, but you don't want, if you're working with 50 or 100 students, you don't want them all sending their application to you to do the references with only a couple of hours notice before those big deadlines. If you're only providing a reference, your student is not linking to you as a registered centre, that should still be completed before they submit the application. And if you're an agent who's working with students who are still studying at school, we do always recommend that the person who should be writing that reference and predicted grades is the one who's most suited to comment on the student's academic ability. So we'd always encourage you to work really closely with the school to make sure that's being done. I'm just going to point out here as well, obviously we're talking about undergraduate. So UCAS is primarily for undergraduate degrees. Any master's and PhD applications need to be made directly to the universities. Where courses have an integrated foundation year as part of that programme, these will be available on UCAS, but there are also some external providers that offer international foundation years, and for those you would apply directly to the provider, the private provider for those. So I'm just going to talk you through the UCAS Hub. So we have a really, really huge number of courses. There's over 40,000 courses available on UCAS at 360 plus different institutions. So there will definitely be something for everybody. But the goal with the Hub is to show the right personalised content to your students and support them, that they know that all they need to be confident with the choices that they're making, that they're happy with those decisions. So we've introduced something called the Favourites tool. It's quite similar to adding a like on social media, and then it groups all those preferences in one place, which we recommend you as advisors group those together, get your students to do that, and then they've got a list for you to start having those conversations with. And it gets them more involved in that process, making sure they're actively doing their own research, and then you can guide them with that as well. And that's really great. For any students who don't have any idea where to start, we'd recommend that they can take our careers quiz. So this can recommend specific jobs to them and what degree would perhaps lead them to that pathway. But it can also highlight what is important to them in a job. So for example, it might bring up that it's really important for them to be in a role working with people or a data-driven role, and then you can use that to support them in finding courses that fit with that general sort of career pathway. We also have subject guides and city guides for once students have an idea about a course, they can look at available and start thinking about where they'd like to study that. We do always recommend as well for international students, if they're planning to return to your home country and they're taking a professional course, so for example, if they're taking medicine, taking nursing, they need to check what they need to do with that qualification when they come back to enable them to practice. Do they need to take a conversion course, anything like that, just so they're informed about all of that from an early stage. So that's a quick overview of how the hub would look for your students. And as you can see here, it's got these handy call to action. So discover careers, discover where to go, to kind of guide those conversations when you're working on this with your students. These are the location guides that we mentioned, because we know that for some of your students, they may have never been to the UK. So there are a lot of things to take into consideration. So for example, the size of the city, do they prefer to be in a big city or perhaps a more rural location? And you can also understand a bit about the demographics of that city. So perhaps some students would like to be with other students from a similar cultural background to them, and this will be more prevalent in certain cities than others. And that's really important for students to have that satisfying experience, to understand what it's going to be like living in that city. And as mentioned, we also have these subject guides. Again, some of the names of the courses that we have available may be a bit unfamiliar. So if a student thinks something may sound interesting to them, they can explore that a little bit more here. And this is always something we'd recommend that you use at the same time as speaking with the universities, because subjects can be taught very differently between different institutions. So for example, I studied English literature. At some universities I was looking at, that was all very quite historic literature, so things like Shakespeare. And then at the institution I ended up going to, it was much more modern literature, so sort of the 1800s onwards. And if that's important to your student, again, that's going to increase their satisfaction if they're studying that in-depth information that they want to take. Teaching and assessment methods can also vary between institutions. Some will be a lot more lecture focused, some will be more those discussion seminars. So research that if your student has a particular interest in a certain sort of learning style. While we're on the topic of the academics, so most universities will have the international grade equivalencies on their own websites. So if you can't see it on UCAS, go directly to the university page and it should be on there. And it should be split by country, but if for some reason you can't find your student's qualification or country, if you reach out to their admissions or their international team, they will be able to explain how those qualification grades that are listed in the UK system will translate to what a student from your school would need to get. So I think Nesma has covered this a little bit already, so I'm just going to skim over this. But part of student experience is really finding that best fit. I've spoken about some of the factors of this already, and it will depend. Some students will weigh more things more heavily than others. So for example, if your student received a £10,000 scholarship, that will factor heavily into their decision, whereas a student who doesn't receive a scholarship, that's going to be obviously less important in helping them decide their institution. But ultimately, the student, along with yourselves and their family, can use a combination of all of these different factors. A lot of these are available on UCAS for that research journey. But we'd also just like to draw attention to rankings, because it's not just the overall ranking that you need to look at. So different rankings look at different individual elements. So again, using the example of the university I went to, it wasn't the highest ranked overall, but for the subject I studied, it was very high ranked within the UK. So subject ranking is something to look at specifically. And there are also things like student support rankings and sort of happiness rankings of students, which for that experience factor is something that's really great to take into consideration for the ranking as a whole picture. And then something that we have got on our website, which is invaluable when talking about the international student experience, is UniBuddy, which is a tool where students can connect to students already studying at those universities. It identifies what university they're at, what the courses that they're studying, and their nationality. So we know a lot of students might want to speak to people from a similar background to themselves to understand what it's like to be an Egyptian living in London, for example. So this is a really great way for them to ask those questions that perhaps they feel a little bit silly to ask the university. Like, for example, when I worked at a university, people didn't want to email me about things like, can I get this kind of food nearby to the university? These are the kind of things that you can ask to the students, though you shouldn't ever feel silly about your students asking things to the university staff. They will be happy to answer those. We know it's a big change to come from overseas, so anything that staff at universities can do to make that a more reassuring experience, make students happier in their decision, is something they are happy to do. And if you, as someone who's working with a student, has studied internationally yourself, obviously you can use your own experience as well to talk to them about that. So I'm quickly going to go through some application updates, the ones that are particularly interesting to international schools. So we've added a new section on where you live, which is meant to help universities ensure the student is paying the correct fees. So we're just asking for some residential history. UCAS will not be making the fee assessments, but it's just to save that backwards and forwards, particularly for students who may be at international schools where they move around quite a lot. And we've also added an update in the nationality section about if you've had any previous UK visa history. Again, UCAS does not make those decisions, but it's just to smooth that process, save 5 different universities emailing them the same questions. We've removed the highest qualification on entry question. We know that this was a little bit confusing for some of the students, and we're already gathering that information in the qualification section. And for students who are taking a formal language test, so a TOEFL or an IELTS, we've moved these input numbers to the education section. It fits there a little bit more logically. We've got a couple more updates to the education section for any students who perhaps are studying online, and to fill in a bit more information about the address of your school. There is a detailed guide talking through all these changes, which will be in the links that I share with you. These are typically for students who have that complex immigration history, or they're in quite an unusual school situation that wasn't previously covered. Onto references. So hopefully everyone was aware that we did change the references for 2024 to that 3-section approach. We will not be making any more changes, so it will be the same as it has been this year, but we have improved the information, advice and guidance. There's a slide at the end where you can access that improved guidance as well, and that's from feedback we've taken on from the advisor community. And within that survey that I mentioned earlier, where you can sign up to give us your feedback, there are some international advisors who fed into this feedback as well. So hopefully you'll find this a lot more useful this year. And then the upcoming personal statement change. So the personal statement, we know, particularly for international students, is one of the most stressful parts of the process. The change will not be coming for 2025, it'll be for 2026. But basically, we wanted to reduce that level of stress on students. So 83% of students were saying they found this really stressful, which isn't what we want to be doing. We want this to be something that students are feeling confident in doing, and you as advisors are not feeling is a stressful, difficult thing for them to be doing. And we also know international students, they're probably applying to multiple countries, not just the UK. So this should help them have clearer guidance on what it is that we're looking for within the UK. So the change will be to break the statement down into some free text questions. There'll be 3 questions. It will all be stuff that they should already have been putting in the essay. So one will be their motivation, which is why are you wanting to study? The second is preparedness. So that's kind of within the academic study. So for example, I've studied anatomy and biology, so that will help me when I start to study medicine. And then the third section will be external preparation. So this would be your perhaps extracurricular, supercurricular activities. So for example, if a student is applying to veterinary medicine and they have been volunteering at an animal shelter, that's directly relevant. We will be shortly sending out some guidance about this. It's just been a bit delayed with the election. Some of our releases have been pushed back to accommodate our teams working on election-based things. But the key thing to remember for the personal statement is always that the focus for the UK is on the course of study. And then finally, just to flag some resources that are available both to you and to your students. So these are the different phases that we would say that students go through. So there's the discover phase, which is when they're doing that research. Decide is the narrowing down, so when they're looking at those city guides, for example. The actual application process, And then the shine is when they go and succeed at their UK university. UCAS isn't typically involved in supporting students after they've arrived, but a lot of people were asking questions about this, so I've just flagged a couple of resources here about how students can access that support when they have arrived post the application process. So the university will have a lot of this support available, but you can also speak to the British Council, UKVI, their Students' Embassy, UCAS, community religious networks in the city, and other students at the university as well. Something that is really useful and we've edited and improved for this year is the Parents Guide. This is something you can download for free on our website. And we know that parents and the family are so involved in that decision to study in the UK. And it's really important that they feel that they know what's going on as well. For this year, we have added some dedicated international sections. So the finance section is about things like scholarships, about how to consider the funding process. And then obviously the accommodation and the moving to your university is a bit different for international students. So we flagged some top tips in there, things about like sorting out your phone contract, about how to make sure that you've got all the right resources in your room when you arrive, to kind of make that transition period a little bit easier, improve their initial arrival experience. For people who are wanting to showcase UCAS resources to families and their students on their own websites, again, so whether you're an agent or a school, we have a widget that you can take off of our website and host for free. And this just groups all of the relevant links in a really handy place where you're going to be able to share that with anyone who's thinking about the UK as an option. But make sure that you select the international version if you're going to download this, just so that it's got the correct information for your students. A quick flag on how we support advisors. So we do support most of our advisors. Pretty much everything we do for advisors is free. And a key way that we do this is our Registered Centre initiative, where schools or agents can sign up to become a registered centre. So that is free, and it also gives you access to our advisor portal, which is a really great way to manage your applications because you can see them all in one place. You can see what the universities have sent back to your students, including any deadlines. So it really helps you to do your role more efficiently. It also enables you to access our support services, so our phone line and our email service. So this is appropriate for anyone who's regularly sending students to the UK, or they're sending quite a few students in one particular year. And this also gives you access to the professional development platform, where you can take free online learning modules to help you understand different aspects of UCAS. And of our current registered centres, more than half of those are already outside of the UK. So definitely something that's appropriate for international as well. We do also have resources if a registered centre isn't right for you. So we have an advisor toolkit, which has things like presentations and an application guide. We have advisor lives, which you can watch on our website. You can either sign up, watch them live, or watch them back afterwards, and newsletters as well, which will keep you up to date with key dates and deadlines. We are, as I said, so my role is to make these more international. So we are trying to add more international specific content into that. And just while we were discussing agents, somebody did send in a question about commission for agents. So UCAS is not involved in the commission of agents. So again, if you would speak directly to the university about that, they will be able to support you with understanding how that kind of process works. So these are just the links to the things that I just discussed. So those lives, the advisor timeline, the newsletters, and the schools team available to help you, this advisor guide. We do also offer digital training. So if anyone feels they need a really specific training on something, we do bespoke sessions. And somebody asked about whether we do in-person events in countries. If we are already travelling to a region for a larger event, we would consider coming into schools potentially. However, we haven't got anything planned for the region at the moment. But if we do make a visit, we would, of course, be in close contact with NESMA. So that would be something we can discuss in the future should we be visiting the region. And finally, another resource that we have available that's really useful for you to read is the UCAS Insights reports. So you will be able to find these in the link, but I'd particularly like to draw your attention to the report in May 2022, which is Where Next? The experience and what influences the choices that international students make. That's a really good insight about that international student experience and understanding in your role what factors those students are thinking about as well. So I'll kick off the questions with a couple that people sent in advance that I haven't already covered. And then if people want to put things in the chat or come onto camera, I'll answer those as well. So one of the questions that someone sent in was about, can a student use a different email profile to submit 2 separate applications? So they wouldn't be able to do that. We do have matching technology here at UCAS. So even if it's a different email address, it will identify similarities where there's the name, the date of birth, address. So one of those applications would get withdrawn if a student did try to do that. Some questions about language requirements. Someone specifically asked about the GED. This will vary between different universities, so it's always best to check. A lot of UK universities do accept a qualification in English from your schooling rather than taking those formal language tests, but we'd always say check with the university first if you think that your student may be exempt from that. And that's the same as somebody who was asking questions about specific qualifications. Again, each university will have their own criteria, so make sure that you are checking with them directly that the qualification your student's doing is accepted. So I will look in the Q&A now, see if there's anything that has come up. One I can see, I think, is for UCAS, is about the 3 sections of the reference for Khalid. So it is not mandatory to cover all 3 sections. So the first section, yes, this is about if you are at the registered centre, you write about the context of your registered centre. So if you're a school, what kind of curriculum you're studying, things like that. Section 2 is not mandatory. So that would be for extenuating circumstances. So for example, if you work with a student who has had an illness during their study, you can write about that in there so the university knows why that may have impacted their study. And section 3 is where you would write about things that make that student stand out. So you should hopefully have something good to say about your student in that section. So yeah, but section 2, if your student has had a very normal education experience, you don't need to write anything in there. That's fine. There's a box you can tick to say nothing to say here. Okay.
There's one, I see one on what if a student wants to change their mind?
Okay. So if this refers to changing their mind once they've already received the offers, that's fine. So as I said, you could decline the offer and you could use the extra process or the clearing process, depending at what time of the year it is. However, we would always recommend that you do your research before you decline that place, because we don't want you to end up with nothing. If you are referring to changing your mind when you already have arrived and started your course, that is at the discretion of the university, whether they will allow you to switch between courses or not.
And also there is a question about common challenges for international students they face during these milestones and how they can help them to navigate this effectively. I think this is the question, yes, from one of the agents.
Yeah, so I think some of the issues are with not perhaps understanding what is being asked in the application form. So then there can be a lot of backwards and forwards between the university and the student. So we're trying to improve this with the advice and guidance on the application form and in the guide that we give to the agents and the schools about how to support the application process. But as always, if you as an agent school have any questions, you don't understand a section on the application form, you can contact us and we will support you with what we're expecting in that section. The personal statement can be a point of difficulty, just because, again, we know students are probably applying to their home country. They may be applying to Australia, America also. So making sure that they write what UK universities are looking for, which is that subject focus, is something that's really important. And we do have a lot of resources on the UCAS website. There's some videos about that. There's some guides about how to write a good statement that will be changing for 2026 when we bring in the new statement, but there's still the stuff for the current statement on there as well.
Okay.
Any more questions for Becca?
I can see just something from
Yes.
Manju. Manju, if you want to email me specifically about your question, about that issue you've been having with your portal, I will deal with that directly with you.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're happy? Yeah, so Becca's email's on the screen. Feel free to contact her directly. Becca, that has been amazing. Thank you so much for a comprehensive presentation and all the resources you shared. It's always delightful to work with you, to have you in our events.
Great, thank you so much, everybody. See you later. Bye.
And as always, Becca will be sharing the slides with us, and we will circulate them to you. Coming up next is our colleague from UKVI, Robert Reid. I can give you a few minutes to grab your water, grab your coffee, and come back in 5 minutes. And Rob will start his presentation about UKVI. The next segment of the webinar will not be recorded. So UKVI session will not be recorded. But we're happy for you to engage with Rob through the Q&A section and through the chat. We'll see you in 4 minutes now. So 10:35 UK time. Okay, we know how much time and effort you put into supporting your students. And what we wanted to do is to try and support your students just a little bit. We hope we have succeeded in doing that. The questions will continue to be, the questions and answers will be responded to, I promise you that. So bear with us until we circulate, until we reach out to UKVI colleagues and UCAS colleagues to answer any questions that haven't responded, and any questions that we have not responded as British Council also will be shared with you. Sorry, I'm doing another run of the slides to reach the last slide. We really hope to see you in person. Do you recognize yourself in any of these pictures? If you do, raise your hand. Let us know that you were on one of these events. If you're not on the hub, make sure you are. And you could scan the link, or your colleagues have already shared the link in the chat. And we will request from you to complete a feedback form. If colleagues can please share the link to the feedback form in the chat now. This is different from, it looks similar, but it's different from the form where you signed in. Thank you, Nancy. So Nancy, my colleague, Shobana, has, so you find her in the chat here, has shared the form. Please take 5 minutes to complete the survey. That will mean a lot to us and will allow us to support you better in future events. Thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on our online events and in-country events.